Welcome to today's DAC update. We have some items that we are returning to, just some reminders that we want to make sure that you folks have, and then just a couple other things that, again, we just want to make sure that you are completely aware. And I'm thankful that I have Maggie online because bulk of this is hers. So we will get started. And thank you all just again for the questions and just reaching out, contacting us. I want to make sure that you have the information that you need. So thank you for reaching out to us. And this is what we are covering today. Just a reminder about the proficiency levels. We have a question around the NEP snapshot. Iris is going to talk about the ACT. I have some information about NAEP, and then Maggie has some information about NTCs, external programs, student records, and then Allie will talk with us again about reports. So proficiency levels. Just want to make sure. Oh, here's the total test. So the total NSCAS growth and science tests that have been submitted, over 320,000 total tests. So again, thank you for all the work that you are doing for state testing. Thank you, thank you. Proficiency levels. Please make sure that you are cautioning your teachers. Please understand that the proficiency levels, those developing on track and advanced, proficiency levels are preliminary. Because we are conducting standard setting for ELA and math, new cut scores will be developed. And so we want to just make sure that when you look at those proficiency levels, you keep those in mind, that fact in mind. The decision had been made to share the scale score, and that's why you are seeing that. They could not, as I recall, could not suppress the proficiency level if we had the scale score out there. So that's why you are seeing those. All right, any questions on that? So just know that it may remain the same, but there is a likelihood that the proficiency level may change, will change. Okay. NEP snapshot. There is the NEP platform provides a PDF form of the snapshot. I don't know if that is something that you use, but we do have a question around that, whether it is of value to you if you feel that we should keep the NEP snapshot in a PDF form. We would really appreciate it if you could drop down into the chat whether you feel that it's something that you want to keep. So if you have an opinion, really would appreciate you sharing that with us so we can bring that back to the team that is looking at the redesigning the NEP. So please let us know.
I dropped the link into the chat for the particular screen that we're talking about.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, thanks, Darren. I appreciate that shout out. Okay, ACT. Iris, you on?
Sure. Yes,
okay.
ma'am. Absolutely.
Take this, please. Thank you.
Okay. You'll give Trudy a break. How about that? Thanks so much. I'm glad everyone's here. If you have by chance still answer documents for pre-ACT that need to be scored, please return those to ACT by May 15th. That way they are scored. If they arrive after May 15th, they will not be scored. So there you go. Just shout that out. ACT scores, everybody's asking, where are my scores? How come I only got some of my scores? So normally scores are done in batches. Your students may not all be in one batch. So one batch might get done before the other batch, but it normally takes 5 to 8 weeks to get scores for the ACT with writing the test. So if you're not seeing a couple kids, that's because they're still going through the process of scoring. It might be something as simple as the writing portion and making sure that that's, we're doing the very best that we can to give you an accurate score. So, but if you have questions on how to view those in success.act.org, or if you need any access with that or any questions about reports or any of that good stuff, please let me know. That's all I have.
Okay, and are there any questions around ACT or pre-ACT that Iris can help answer right now? Putting you on the spot, Iris, sorry. But
yeah, no, that's what I'm here for.
Any questions, folks, for Iris on ACT or pre-ACT?
Trudy, I have a question for Iris. Are Rule 18 programs coding ACT, not tested codes?
It depends on the program, Melissa.
Because we don't have access to those kids anymore in PNA, or are we going to just do that on the cleanup end with Maggie? Or
Maggie, how do you want to deal with that?
If they're not doing it, that's when it will be taken care of.
Okay.
We'll take care of it at the back on the post-test verification time.
Thanks.
Okay, other questions? All right, thank you, Iris. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, the NAEP, this national test, National Assessment of Educational Progress. Polly Bowie, our NAEP coordinator, could not be here today. So she's asked me to provide this information. Districts and schools will be notified if they are selected for NAEP 2024 in June. Students in grades 4, 8, and 12 will participate. 4th grade reading and math, 8th grade reading, math, and science, and 12th grade reading and math. The assessment dates will be from January 29th through March 8 of 2024. Just a reminder, NAEP participation is required, and NDE does not select the district or the schools. NCES selects those. So,
and Trudy, I'm here.
Oh, hi.
Molly.
Okay.
I'm here.
Yeah.
So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to do my best to answer them. But you'll be notified here fairly soon if you are selected this year.
Polly, hi, this is Rob.
Hi, Rob.
Polly and I have talked about this, but it might be useful for other people to hear or maybe chime in. The process runs generally pretty smoothly from the school, and the test coordinator ends in LPS, and Polly does a great job organizing it. The thing Polly and I have talked about is if NDE, I know it's not voluntary, but if there's any wiggle room or suggestions NDE can make about making the surveys that schools have to fill out shorter, because it's a lot of upfront survey work. That at a time when schools don't have time for that. So if somebody from NDE can advocate about that, or allow district level people or state level people to submit some information so schools don't have to keep repeating all that.
Thanks, Rob, for your input. I will say, and you'll probably hear me talk a little bit more about this as we get closer, NAEP is going to look a little bit different this year in that we've always asked to have a test coordinator at each school, but we're also going to ask for a technology coordinator because NAEP will be bringing in Chromebooks, but they're also going to be using the school's network to give the test this year, which is a little bit different. They did a field test this past year with a variety of schools, and it went pretty well. There were a few glitches, but they hope to get that all worked out. So more to come on NAEP as we get closer.
Other questions or feedback on NAEP? Okay, thanks, Polly. Okay, Maggie, your slides, not tested codes, and then we'll talk about edits in a bit. So.
Okay. I realize there's a lot of confusion between using remove and not currently enrolled. So I created this a little bit more of a cheat sheet for you here. What it really boils down to is, you know, at this point between NSCAS growth and alternate is April 3. April 3. If the student's withdraw date is before April 3, use remove. If their withdraw date is after April 3rd, use not currently enrolled. Oh, these are new students. I'm sorry. New students are, the key date is April 28th. If the student's start date in advisor is 4/28 or sooner, we expect the student to have tested. And you have until the 12th to test those students if you haven't already. And we can go to the next slide.
Okay, we have a couple questions.
Oh, okay.
Or one question. What is the correct code for students that transfer out of state before testing?
Remove.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then ACT students, if you had a new student come in 4/7 or prior, we expected you to test that student, even if you had already tested your students. You know, if you chose that first test window, that first test date, and you had a new student come in, you are expected to test that new student. If you did not, that student should be coded as a UTT. And we can go to the next one. For ACT withdrawn students, the magic date was 3/21. And we can go to the next one. Okay, last day to make any edits to the test systems. ACT was yesterday, and for NSCAS growth and for the alternate assessment, you have until the 12th of May. And then for, I'm sorry, NSCAS growth is, you have until the 16th. So that you have a couple of spare days there for NSCAS growth to catch up with any not tested codes. Okay, next slide. Very important, if you have not been communicating with the external programs and checking on progress of the students that you have attending those programs, please do that now so that if there's any last minute testing, they have until the 12th to get those kids tested. But it is definitely the district's response. Ultimately, it's the district's responsibility that those kids get tested. So please do your due diligence. And then last but not least is the emergency medical waivers. I've had a couple of districts try and send all of them, all of their forms in one PDF. I'd really appreciate it if you would just send one at a time. And please complete the form in its entirety. It takes time for me to fill in the blanks. So if you could do that for me, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, questions for Maggie?
I think I have one more slide.
Oh, you do?
Yep.
I'm sorry. Oh yeah, you do. All right. Sorry.
Okay. So NWEA sends me an anomaly list each week. And this last week, this week that we're in, I received a list of over well over 6,000 students actually, who are in Acacia for spring, but not in CAP for the spring term. So I did some analysis, I did some digging, and right now I see over 3,000 students that are actively enrolled in the districts, should be most likely be testing. I haven't gotten into the nitty-gritty of the list, but from the top tier that I'm looking at, these students are all enrolled in the districts. So if you want to see their students' test results in the MAP report suite, these students need to be rostered into the spring term in CAP, which is your MAP growth platform. I'm going to reach out to some of the districts that have a large number of students in that 3,000 count, but do remember that if you created any records in Acacia manually, you need to double check that they're also rostered in CAP for the spring. Okay.
Maggie, when would a deadline for that be? Like, do we have?
You have until the 16th.
Oh, wow. Because we're not going to put our Rule 18 kids in yet because we don't normally do that. I mean, so I don't know. We're going to lose out on those kids then, I guess.
Well, actually, Melissa, you and I can have a conversation on the side because we've been talking about your Rule 18 kids.
Yeah.
And your internal programs, you know, kind of, so we can discuss that. I'm still talking to NWA about those records, so we'll touch base here in the next few days.
Yeah, I just didn't want to mess anything up during the window, but yeah. I wondered if there might be more time to get them in after the fact now, just still during the spring map window, but we'll see. Yeah, a side conversation would be great. Thanks.
Okay.
Maggie, I have a question. So we found some of our kids weren't populating into MAP reports. And a couple of them were new students to our district this year, but there was something not flagged in Power School that wasn't allowing them to pull over. Are you talking about those kind of kids, or are there? Okay. So
if you're having trouble getting them into CAP, so you probably manually added them to Acacia?
No, they came through
NSCAS growth testing?
No, they were rostered through Clever into MAP.
Okay.
And then it was something that when I had contacted NWA, they said one of the drop downs in our Power School wasn't checked, so it wasn't recognizing that they were the same student. And so once we checked those boxes, they showed up on our MAP report. But I just got lucky because I knew 3 of them were my own children because we just moved here, and it was a coincidence between 2 families that had just moved to the district. So we kind of were able to figure that out, but I didn't know if there was any other way or if that's what you were talking about.
Ashland Greenwood isn't one of my concerns.
Okay, good.
There's one student, and if you want to shoot me an email for that one student, I can let you know.
I just didn't know if that was maybe some of the other districts were having the same issue with something that wasn't, or if that was what you were talking about. So thank you.
My theory is that because the records were already in Acacia, the districts may not have bothered uploading their roster through CAP. This is my theory. But that I will reach out to those districts specifically to say, you know, what's going on so that I can figure out what the issue really is.
Other questions? NTC codes, last day for edits. Okay.
Oh, I see a lot of talk about how to send the EMWs. Yeah. I know we've had some trouble with the fax number a few times this test season. So if you do have an EMW that you're reluctant to send, you know, just reach out to me or Stacy. We can send you a secure email. and then you can attach that EMW to that secure email and respond back to Stacy or myself, and we'll get it processed.
Thanks, Maggie. Okay, reports, Allie.
Just wanted to share again with everyone, by now you should have seen all of the RIT scores ingested from NSCAS growth into the MAP growth reports that we're familiar with. So we have seen that. Just want to remind folks that if we do double test, there's a couple of ways to get the information separated out. The first is if you run the comprehensive data file. And with that data file, you'll get both the spring and the state growth, and you can sort accordingly on that Excel file. You can also run the class and the grade reports, and that will show up as separate test events. So they will, the student with the lowest SEM, the test event with the lowest SEM will be the one that shows up in the regular font. The higher of the two will have the student showed out in gray. But that was what you can see those scores if you run the class. The teachers can see scores if they run the class report, and then district or coordinators can see it in the grade reports. So just a caution that it doesn't calculate the scores at the bottom. If you want to calculate, you're going to have to do a little bit of hand calculations for those class or grade scores altogether. And then another point to remember is that the students must be registered in CAP for the spring. So in the MAP growth platform, to be able to see the results in the familiar reports. And then I've just linked to a connection article on how to get to the comprehensive data file if you need to do that. I've said it a few times at our DAC meetings, but we still get a few questions. So just wanted to make sure that we let people know and that everyone is aware of what's happening with the reports. Any questions or thoughts about that?
Allie, we had some issues with the test names rolling over. Our grade 8 students, when they rolled into MAP, it was saying it was the MAP growth or state growth 2 through 5. And it looks like some of those have been fixed, but we still have some students that are showing that. And I'm hoping it's just a test name issue and not something worse.
It is a test name issue, and I do believe that that was fixed last Monday. So depending on when the report was run, if you're still seeing that, I would contact partner support just to give them a heads up. But there was a fix that we did catch that, and it is not more serious than just the naming convention that was on there. So
okay. And I also saw, is there the version number of the test for state growth? I thought I was seeing some different versions. Has there only been one version of the state test that we should be seeing? Like when it says, I don't know, you know what I mean? At the end of the name, it says T something. At every grade, should we just be seeing one version, or depending on the day they tested, they got a different version? Do you know?
That I don't.
Hi, Melissa. This is Ricky from NWA. So as what I understand is that might be that they might have had a student that's taking like some type of fixed form, whether, based on an accommodation or something like that. So that's differentiating from the adaptive test. That would make sense because it was probably paper, pencil, or Braille. Thanks. Yep, exactly. And then one of the questions that came up was around the SEM and the rounding that folks are seeing for the state growth SEM. And that's something that for this spring, that's the way it's going to be. That's the way it's been in terms of how we report out SEM for the state platform. It's something that our teams are aware of and have taken into consideration for enhancements to that feature moving forward so that we can have some parity between the MAP growth SEM and the state growth. But it's rounding, it's not, it's just the way it's displayed there. So for the spring, that's the way it will be.
Tricky.
I have a question in regards to the class and the grade reports. Will it show both of, like, if they took both the NSCAS and the MAPS testing, will it show both and indicate which one is which?
Yeah, on the class report, you'll get the report that has just the spring growth. So you'll get those two. And then if you keep scrolling down, there'll be another report for the state growth. So it'll look like two separate test events. And so they'll show up, they'll just be grayed out in whichever one is the higher SEM.
Okay. And then on a student progress report, like that's a report that we generally send home. If we don't want that NSCAS report on there, we have to go into each individual student and indicate that? Or is there a report that we can send home with parents with just MAP scores?
Right now, I do have someone that was looking into going into each individual student and saying exclude this test event from the results. And I think right now that's the only way that you can get if you want the MAP growth scores, that you can get just the MAP growth scores on the student reports.
On an individualized
basis, yeah.
Okay, it's just kind of hard to know, like when you print that report, which one it is, because it doesn't say. It just has taken one or the other, and it's hard to know which one it is. But unless if we went back to the class report or that grade report, we would be able to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Amber, did you get your question answered then?
Yeah, I wish we could somehow have like a kind of toggle switch to be able to select MAP growth or the NSCAS assessment.
Yes.
Because I still send the reports home to my families, and now I don't know who just said something, but now when we print those reports, just looking at the individual reports, my teachers don't know what test, and then how do we explain that to parents?
That's exactly where we were at with it. Yep.
Okay. And then Violet, I see some of this along the same line. Any way to separate out reports? Would like to see NSCAS reports in occasion MAP reporting in CAP. There is no separation. Am I correct, Allie? Can you?
Correct. Yeah. So that's when we're talking about the class reports and the grade reports. And then if you did want to go in and exclude the test event for the students, you could go in and exclude the state growth test event if you wanted just pure MAP growth results.
Thanks, Allie.
But that would be clicking on every student.
Yeah, right. Do you happen to have some sort of guidance? So I'm sure if I said that to an email to folks, it might not be as clear as if do you have something that kind of gives directions so that?
Yes, there is a step-by-step that NWA sent me.
I would really appreciate that if somebody has access to that.
Okay, I see some other questions. Kim and Ricky, hopefully you can answer this. A question about the rounding and what shows up on the reports. If the test with the lower SEM is the one on the report, is it really the one with the lowest SEM? For example, if spring MAP was 3.37 and spring NSCAS was 3.47, but rounded to 3, which one would show up on the report? Any idea, Ricky?
Yeah, it's a question that we had out to our psychometric team, and I'd need to circle back with them to determine whether they've come to an answer or not. Initially when we talked to them about it, the reason why the rounding happens in the state growth platform is that the way they explained it is that statistically it's not a significant, to go out to the 100th place. It doesn't have bearing on the validity of the test. But that said, I'm not a psychometric professional. Let me take it back to our team to answer the question, at least, so folks know what the answer is, and then we'll come back to it. I'll get you that answer, Trudy.
All right, thank you. And just so you know, folks, we are collecting, of course, the meeting chat. So we have these questions, and the ones that we can't provide a concrete answer to, we'll make sure that we bring those back. I have a question in the chat from Bethany, but Angela has her hand raised. So I'll request Angela come off and ask her question, and then I'll respond to you. Yeah.
Hi, Trudy. This is Angie Wright. I'm just wondering, excuse me, I'm just wondering if this is a soft launch of putting NSCAS data into the MAP growth reports. Is it already decided that this is how we will continue next year? Or is it a pilot and we will, and you're gathering input and then make a decision? I'm just trying to figure out, am I looking at a solution for 1 year, or am I looking long-term that this is already decided?
I know it was framed as a soft launch, but I also remember hearing the words pilot, and we chose not to use pilot because soft launch was a more accurate description. So in my mind, this is, we're gathering data, we're making sure that we have an understanding of what this looks like and how we can make this better. That's my perspective, and that's what I expect. Yeah.
Okay, but it's launched and we're going to move forward with it. It's not a, are we going to do it or aren't we? Is that fair?
Yes, that's fair.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that.
Yep, yep. Okay, Bethany, you said this is a change from what you said before, though, right? I'm not quite sure what you mean. Before we could only see one of the scores, and now we can see both, but in two different areas. Are you talking about two different reports then, or can you clarify for me, please, Bethany?
My understanding was that on the grade report, it would just show one or the other. But I think what Allie's saying, I haven't tried to run it, but in the NSCAS section, it's going to show some kids that are grayed out, but have their scores where we can see them if they're the lower or the higher of the two SEMs. And then on the other section where the map is, it's going to show scores where we can see them, but they'll be grayed out if they're the higher of the two SEMs. So we can actually see both scores on a report and not just the data file, which is what we had been told previously, correct?
Correct, on the class and the grade report. So the last two DAC meetings, if you run those, it's going to run all of your map growth results and a report. And then the next pages, it's going to run all of your state, your NSCAS results.
And some of them will be gray, but we can still see the scores there.
Correct.
Okay. All right, because that's different. We didn't actually double test, but that's different than we were expecting based on what you had previously said. So I just wanted to make sure that I understood that since we didn't double test, we don't have any that we can look at.
But in the live reports like Quadrant and the interactive reports, only the one is showing, and it's just a separate page, just like if you had taken language 2 through 5 test or 6+.
Okay, that I understand now. We are also seeing what Darren Kelberlaw pointed out, which is if you look in the history of results for a student, say you wanted to go in and exclude some results, the NSCAS ones are showing up like 4 times. So you'd have to unclick them all, I guess. So you'd have to look up each kid individually, and then you'd have to unclick all 4 of their results, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and we had that last week too. I'm not sure if we're the ones that reported it, but the system was like keeping 2 of them. So our reports, everything was grayed out in terms of you couldn't, not the MAP score or for people that just took state growth, that score was being grayed out. And NWEA told me they were working on a fix, but that we could just go in and exclude that extra score. the one that was still checked. Most of them were automatically excluded, but on at least at one school specifically, they were all, it seemed like it was all from one specific testing date, where 2 of them were still checked and included in the reports, making them both invalid according to the report. So yeah, we had to go in by hand and do that. But I think I haven't had another report.
Yeah, Melissa, thank you for calling that out. Yeah, our team was aware of that and put a fix in. If you're still seeing that, please reach out to partner support so that we can make sure that we're addressing that issue if it's still occurring for you.
Ricky, I just called yesterday and they said that the test event page won't ever be updated and that the report site is what they were worried about.
Okay. So it's not the report you're talking about, it's the event page. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And if we keep doing this, that page gets really long and then there's lots of check boxes that are unnecessary. It just seems like it's a coding issue that's easily solved. It's unique records rather than just all records.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Darren, for clarifying that the events, not the reports you're talking about. And what I can do is make sure that the team that worked on this implementation is aware of that as well, so that they can look at it going forward, take that feedback into account.
Angela, you mentioned, has there been an explanation for why this is occurring? And I think it's because of the responding to Darren's comment about the student test event page, seeing duplicate test events. Do you have your answer?
Yes.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. Okay. Other questions, comments, feedback, please. Let us hear what you have to say.
Trudy, I do have a question about the reports through CAP. So for 3rd through 8th grade, my reports are showing fine for math, but for ELA, it says that I have 0 tested students, but then on the next page, it has all the students listed in gray. But for math, it doesn't do that. So did I do something wrong, or why is it showing up that way?
Allie or Ricky? I'm sorry, I can't answer your question.
Yeah, I would encourage you to call partner support. They're the best ones that can help you with the map growth report suite to see, just make sure that you know there is something missing there. They can reassure that if there's still an issue, they then can escalate that up to the right teams. But first call them, make sure that everything's set up correctly on your end, and then we can go further.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Angie, Angela, there's a request to have you repeat the questions that you asked me regarding the soft launch. Melissa would like to hear those again. Would you be willing to do that, please?
Sure. I was just asking, trying to discern if the soft launch meant it's a launch and we're going forward with this, with like it's a decision that's been made, or I was trying to clarify if there's still a decision to be made about putting NSCAF data into map growth reports. I was just trying to clarify if it was decision made and we're moving forward and learning and trying to make it better, or decision to be made of we're going to go back and not put NSCAF growth into the map growth reports. But it sounds like the decision's been made and we're going to try to make it better, but not exclude the data in the future.
Okay, then Trudy, I guess I have a follow-up to that. I thought her question maybe was broader. She's specifically talking about the map data, but I would have that same question for rostering the test in general. I need a confirmation that yes, this is the test we're using and we're moving forward. because we got some pretty big decisions to make right now. You know, reports were one of the things holding us back, and it's the not knowing if things are up in the air or if it's not. I just wish we knew, not just with the map data or getting NSCAS getting populated, but in general, all of it. It's hard to make decisions.
Sure. Those are all questions that and issues that need to be decided sooner rather than later. I know Ricky has asked as well. So as soon as before the end of this month, there will be a decision. Okay.
Decision about what?
There were questions around whether we were continuing with this ingestion of NSCAS growth data into MAP reporting suite.
Okay, thank you. There were a lot of questions in the chat, and I wanted to make sure that I was understanding the one you were answering. Sorry about that.
Okay. Looking in the chat. You have your answer, Amber, I believe, on the times, how many times it's required. Spring only, fall and winter remain optional.
So Trudy, I guess here's my concern. If fall and winter are optional and we continue to do MAP growth, then my kids and teachers and parents and our district want to be able to look at that data from fall to spring. And then if we throw that spring NSCAS growth in there, it manipulates our reports.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the feedback. I'm listening. I really am.
Yep,
folks.
I know.
I really am. I am.
So Trudy, this is Sherry Larson. I have a quick question. I heard somebody talking about the reports and how they said that there were no students that were included, and yet all of the scores showed up afterward and were gray. So I went and looked at my reports, and I saw that in math, all of the students were considered, the NWA MAP test was considered the inappropriate or not as reliable. And so we had absolutely nothing in those charts where you talk about the average and median and all of that kind of stuff. We had no data in there. So then I went to reading, and so there was a mix where sometimes the state was more reliable, sometimes NWA was more reliable, but then in those little boxes with all of the summary data, it only counted in the summary data just the ones that were reliable. So those reports aren't giving us as it stands right now, those reports aren't giving us the information we need. And I think I heard that that's something that I need to call about, and because that's not supposed to be the case. Is that correct?
The scores that are graded. Oh, go ahead, Ricky.
No, I was just going to reinforce that when it comes to the MAP growth reporting suite, the best people to help you initially to make sure that there's nothing not set up correctly on your end would be partner support. But go ahead, Allie.
That's what I just, partner support is always helpful, but when you do those summary boxes, it is only going to show the ones that are bold, not bold, but normal print, not any grayed out data. So you would have to, that's where the hand calculating on those would come in, or that comprehensive data file.
Okay, thank you very much.
One thing I wanted to, so Trudy just addressed it as well. There's a question from April about students seeing the blueprint, and the guarantee there is in spring that they're forced to stay on blueprint because we are providing that accountability score. Fall and winter, due to the flexible nature of the test model, there is some instances where a student may not see all 27 questions that are part of the blueprint. It may only be 26. That often happens with a student who's higher performing, is what we've seen in some of the cases that have come up. But that's all part of the adaptive test. That's the way the engine's intended to work. That's, you know, trying to provide as much information about that individual student and their individual results, which is something that we can do in fall and winter. We still do that in spring, but we do have to make sure that they meet the blueprint for accountability.
Okay. Final question.
I do want to just touch on a note there. I believe it's Kyla. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly there. Just to clarify that, you know, I think initially the verbiage of estimated RIT was used. You know, we've done more validity studies, and a RIT is a RIT is a RIT. Allie's been hammering that home in her meetings as well. And so you are getting a RIT score from NSCAS growth. That RIT score comes from all the questions that a student sees, you know, as opposed to the scale score, which is only provided using the blueprint of the on-grade blueprint items. And the intent is for that RIT score to be used like any other RIT score. Whether you choose to use that is obviously up to you and other educational leaders in terms of, you know, whether you use map growth, but that's just throwing that out there. And we've updated our guides to reflect that. It's a RIT score.
Trudy, I had one more follow-up question to the NEP thing. And I think in the chat, it said we're only talking about that one page, but is there, are you guys reviewing the whole thing?
Yes.
Like AQuest data? Because one,
I don't know about AQuest data, but we are looking at the actual, what the public sees on the NEP.
Okay, because the one thing that I know is an issue for us when it comes to AQuest time is the fact that you have to be logged into the secure portal to get the big detailed AQuest report with all the calculations. And I don't know about other districts, but we don't give everybody permission for that one. It'd be nice if people could download the reports from, you know, not the details necessarily, but I don't know, just the AQuest one. If there's a revamp of the whole thing, I think that'd be great to collect feedback.
Okay. There was a question in the chat. Ricky, who can I talk to about RIT scores are plus -1 across MAP and NSCAS?
I'm not quite sure what the question is, Darren, that you're asking.
Well, there's a report that says the vast majority of kids in Nebraska are within ±1 RIT score when taking MAP and NSCAS in the same test season. I was just, and I assume that's why I keep hearing a RIT is a RIT is a RIT. Is there somebody, or I'm just curious how that was calculated, and because I'm not seeing that in my district, even though we're not done testing yet, but I was just wanting to learn how that was studied.
And the source of that is it the graph that was provided, or I just need to make sure if I'm going to take it back to my team that I'm using the same source of data that you are.
It is our NSCAS growth and MAP growth comparable. It's from the NWA State Solutions team, and it's a big banner at the bottom. And I just was curious how they collected that, because it seems super ambitious to be within ±1 RIT on 2 different tests when one is constrained to on grade level and the other one can go anywhere a kid is going with only 40 some items. So there might be other things, assumptions made that I might not be making. So I was just curious, who's that researcher and can we learn from how they did that?
Yeah, so for that, you've met him, Yang Lo, is the one that looked into those scores and pulled together that information for Trudy and others.
Can you send me his email? I've met him, but I don't have his email.
Darren, I'll take care of that right now.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. Okay. And then someone did ask about NDE providing map growth. We do have the present contract with NWEA goes through June of 2024. And the state board did approve continuing the map growth 3 through 8 through 23-24. We are releasing the RFP for statewide assessment. I just can't go beyond June of 2024. At this point, I have no idea. So you do have access from the state to 3 through 8 map growth next year.
Trudy, I have a question about how the cut scores will be calculated over the summer and how drastically we might expect our proficiency scores to change, because a lot of us are getting like preliminary data right now, but we know it's not final. So just with some of the concerns, like with like we've seen a lot of our winter, we were a district that chose to do NSCAS growth for fall, winter, spring. And so we saw a lot of our winter scores go down because like students were getting a harder version of the test. I mean, is there any indication of how those scores might be adjusted or how much as you guys are looking at data, or who's deciding that?
The one of the things, if you are accessing the DAC newsletter, you'll see that we've been recruiting for quite a while, Nebraska educators. So we have, for standard setting, we go beyond just the classroom teacher. So we have assessment folks, we have higher ed, and curriculum folks, I believe there are on there as well. So these individuals will have a actually take the test, and then they have conversations. First, they go through looking at each item and having a conversation basically with themselves, where they ask themselves the question, what would a barely on-track student do with this question? Would they get it right? Would they not get it right? And so they continue to go through each of the questions. There are conversations. They talk with each other. This is what I got. This is what you have. Then there's a second conversation that they have. And the question is, what would a barely advanced student do on this item? So again, they do the same thing. Ultimately, they have an opportunity to see what their preliminary work, what impact it would have on the scores. So they do have the scores from the 2023 test. They look at that, they look and decide, is that reasonable? Are we, do we need to have a conversation about further consensus? Just basically, are we comfortable with what we've come up with? There are considerations for comparisons with a national test, whether that's an ACT or whether that's a NAEP, and whether they want to have that conversation. When we saw the when we saw the science standard setting, there was consideration, but they didn't go into too much depth with looking at the science in relationship to the ACT. So ultimately, though, once those are set, there's also going to be a policy review made up of members from the Assessment and Accountability Advisory Group, from NASIA, and also the TAC, so the Technical Advisory Committee. All of those folks are also going to look at the results from the standard setting And they're going to approach it from the point of, is this a reasonable cut score? Is it reasonable to expect that this is correct? They're looking at the process. They're making sure that it's vetted, basically. The TAC has already vetted the process. They did that at the March Technical Advisory Committee meeting. And so we do have some input from them. Ultimately, the final decisions are going to be made by the State Board of Education. They're the ones that adopt them and decide that these are reasonable again. So that's in a nutshell, but it takes, we have this process going 4 days. And so we'll have those results then at the end of the 4th day.
Trudy, this is Ricky. I just want to jump in just to clarify too.
Yep.
The cut scores means that we're setting the cut scores for the achievement levels. We're not changing student scores.
Right.
Student scores, their scale score will remain or should remain the same with some caveats there, but that's based on some of the work that our team will do. But standard setting is about setting cut scores where a student is achieving, you know, based on the 3 ALDs. Also, I see Catherine's comments in the chat. I just want to clarify, excuse me, that the RIT score is a measurement of growth. It's not an accountability measure. Scale scores are used for accountability, for state accountability.
Okay.
And
I'm
Trudy,
sorry, guys. I've got 3 minutes. Okay. Yes, April. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
and I apologize if this was maybe asked already, but we're seeing like 7th grade students on the map get 11th grade questions for math about concepts that they have no idea about, instead of getting like an 8th or 9th grade question. So I just wondered if that was something that was going to be reviewed and adjusted, because they're getting almost all the questions wrong, and we'd rather know what they can do versus what they can't do.
Yeah, this is Ricky again. We know there's been a number of questions about the adaptive nature of the test and how that looks, and it's different. It's different from my experience. You know, prior work that I've done, it's all been fixed form. It's been very straightforward and easy to understand. You know, there's some concepts to keep in mind. Is, you know, once again, it's an individual student's, you know, score is for that student, and because of the adaptive nature, they're not seeing the same set of items because it adjusts to that student as they go through the assessment. Two, and there comes a point where, like, if you get a student that has all right, that actually doesn't tell you as much information as a student who actually gets closer to 50% wrong, because you're hitting those limits and you're getting a better idea of what they can and can't do. If they get it all right, we don't know how far up they went, right? So you want to set some limit to get that information in there. And there's more, we're putting together some communications there to help with this. You're not the only one, April. A number of folks have looked for some extra support just to better understand. Adaptive tests are new, and we give a lot of information out there, and we do have some information coming out that will help. You know, I appreciate your patience with that. I know you've been in contact with our partner support team for a while here with some of these questions, and information is coming.
Did we hear at one point in time that the adaptability on NSCAS was only going to go beyond grade level by 2 grade levels?
Yeah, sorry, that's the other aspect I wanted to address too, is when it comes to high school, because high school is subject-based as opposed to, you know, you're taking specific content areas, right? Typically, the high school set of standards, which is what we're actually trying to align these items to, is just one group called high school. So that's why you may get an 11th grade item on a student that's in middle school, is because it's in that set of items that is technically just 2 grades above, right? Because just the nature of the high school assessment. That's something that Trudy is aware of, people have had questions about, and you know, we can talk through adjustments if that needs to be made, but that's typically how it's been handled, and it does allow us to get some more information from a standards-based perspective. It's not so much about the grade level of the item, it's about the difficulty is something to keep in mind as well. And making sure that, like I said, the engine adapts to that student where they're at in that test at that point in time. So, and like I said, more information will be coming out.
Yeah.
To help with that interpretation.
Yeah. Thanks, Ricky. Definitely. I'm sorry. Bethany, you had your hand up. Yes, ma'am.
I know this is off topic, but we're almost out of time. I wanted to ask a question about the NSCAS alternate. We are trying to clean up all of our not tested codes and everything. And one frustration that we are experiencing is I believe last year they said they were going to fix the report so that when we downloaded the cumulative test status, that it would include the not tested codes, and it still does not. Nor is the no response recorded anywhere that I've found that we can download. So can you find out if there's a report I can download that shows the no responses, and tell them this is another year and we've asked for this like 5 years in a row, and could they just please fix the report so that it will give us what we need?
Yeah, I'll get the message there. I will definitely do that. All right. I'm sorry, folks. It's after 1. Have something else I need to get to. I'm so sorry. Thank you very much. So appreciate you folks sharing. It's important for us to hear your experiences and your concerns. So please keep them coming. It's important for us. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.